put a top performing franchisee in an underperforming, generally underperforming market, they're going to do just fine there. Put an underperforming franchisee in a top market, what happens, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, underperforming franchisees can underperform wherever they're at.
Representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Van Horn.
All right, today I have my friend Kevin Sill on, who is a franchisee and a small business owner. And his whole family has done this together. They got into Budget Blinds together, and then Harmony Flooring, which is a mom and pop business. So I thought it would be fun to have Kevin, who's a mastermind member, on to talk about franchising and non-franchising businesses. So Kevin, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Should we get just address the elephant in the room? You ready to address that?
Sure.
All right. It's Kevin's first podcast. And so I'm not going to say he was super excited to come on, but he's doing it. So most people don't tell me that until after. They're like, "Oh, Erik, that was my first podcast." And then they're relieved it was over. So man, I appreciate you coming on because I think the audience will find this so interesting. One, because people are buying franchises. They are a lot of times thinking, should I start my own business or buy an existing business or buy a franchise? And so you've bought a franchise, started a franchise, and I believe you've acquired some franchises as part of an acquisition strategy. And then you started your own business you bought a business, a small business as well. So just so you know, I think this will be a fascinating conversation. And I've done everything too. I've had my own businesses. I've started businesses. I've bought businesses, and the same thing in franchising. So let's back up. How did you guys as a family get started in franchising?
Sure. So I like to say I'm a second generation franchisee. And when I say that, my dad started by buying a couple Budget Blinds franchises in the fall of 2006. At the time, I was actually in college, so I wasn't really involved in the business a ton at the beginning, but I did do some miscellaneous stuff throughout my college years. I lived in a gray area we didn't own, but no one else owned. So we could operate some in that area. So I went through the Budget Blinds training for sales and got trained to do gray area sales in my area. So we did some sales up there and I did some selling. I did a lot more admin work when I was in college. So sometimes I would, depending on, the different employees we had at the time, because we were small at some point in time, I scheduled. I was in my college apartment at the time, so I had to yell at my roommates to be quiet while I called customers. And I did a variety of other things. From a college standpoint, I have an accounting background, so I was pretty good with the computer side of things. I learned to sell. I wouldn't say I was great at selling ever, but it wasn't my strength, but I did that at times too. And then life got complicated. Basically, at the end of college, I got married, moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and the territories we owned were in eastern Iowa. So I was far away, 2.5 hours away. We didn't own the area. It was owned by another franchisee. And I went to grad school to get my CPA license. So I really wasn't involved in the business for about 7 years then, as I was doing full-time accounting work in the Madison, Wisconsin area. And then I finally was able to get involved again. I kind of wanted to go off on my own, see some different things, see how different organizations operated. I did public accounting for a couple of years. I did accounting for a manufacturer for a couple of years. And then I did accounting for a small tax firm as well. So I got a variety of experiences there. Saw a lot of different businesses, different models, and those types of things. And then basically took that experience and brought it back to budget blinds. I got involved, ultimately planned on working in our commercial division. We do commercial bid work off of blueprints, which a fair amount of franchisees don't do just because of the complexity of it. And I started working from home, and about 2 months later, the Madison franchisee finally called my dad and said, "Hey, I'm ready to retire. Are you guys interested?" And of course, at the time, I was just working from home in Madison, and we're like, "Sure." It was naturally perfect timing that he was ready to be done when I was ready to step in full time and move away from accounting in the short term. So on and off now, we've owned territories we'll come up on 19 years soon. It'll sneak up on us this fall, and then before we know it, it'll be 20.
So you are proof that CPAs, accountants, engineers can be great franchisees, because I know you're a great franchisee. But I'll admit, I've sold thousands of franchises over the years, and whenever I would see CPA, accountant, bookkeeper, engineer, I'd be like, oh, I'd have a little question mark next to them even on my initial call, because they don't always make the best business people. And at the same time, you got some people that are just pure marketers, pure salespeople. They don't know how to do things within finance and knowing the numbers and making decisions based off of the numbers. So in that family dynamic that you have, like, give me an idea, whether it's now or maybe a few years ago when you guys were working in the business, like, what are the different roles that the family members had in the business?
Sure. So my dad was also an accountant, so I followed in his footsteps from a schooling and education standpoint. What we like to say is we're aggressive accountants, if you want to look at it that way. We're both risk takers to a certain extent. We both like blackjack and gambling and some of those types of things. And so, we're not your typical accountant from that standpoint. We basically, have always been a little more aggressive from that standpoint. The other nice thing is my dad immediately, when he bought the business, brought my brother-in-law, John, into the business. John had a background in mainly commercial flooring. He was laying terrazzo floors. And he is actually a lot more of a natural salesperson. So for a long time, he's basically headed up the sales division and more or less the operation side of things as well. But he brought more of maybe that sales side of things to the business. And then my sister's now involved as well. She does more on the education side. She's actually has a teaching background and teaching degree. So she's more on processes, educating, improving our employees and those types of things. But it's helped round out our team to have, someone focused on the training side of things. And as we've grown and had more and more employees. So a variety of different roles. I also tend to be more of a techie type of person. So I've learned marketing, digital marketing, dealt with basically all of our IT stuff as we've grown throughout the years. And then HR, we've kind of passed around depending on the size and time and how big we were. We now have a full-time HR person, but that kind of passed from my dad to me as well. But John was always involved, my brother-in-law as well, in doing interviews and those types of things. So we try and just balance it out on who feels most comfortable with this, who's got the availability, and we've just passed things back and forth over the years as we've had to.
So give us a sense of the size of your operations, whether it's like ground covered, revenue volume, the amount of people that you have working for you, whatever metric you want to give us a sense of the size of the operation that you have.
Sure. So when you buy budget blinds territories, you buy groups of zip codes. And so those typically are kind of like a major city. So in eastern Iowa, we have 4 budget blinds territories. Those are the original 4 we started with. We then moved up to Madison, Wisconsin, and we own basically half of Madison, kind of the west side and north side of town. So we have 2 territories there. Then we acquired a couple territories, which are Western Milwaukee suburbs. So those are about 2 hours away, or not 2 hours, they're about an hour away from my office. And we serve them from my office. We just have a salesperson that lives over there. And then we expanded. Our next expansion was to La Crosse, Wisconsin, which is right on the border between Wisconsin and Minnesota. Another about 2 hours away up there. And then our most recent couple of acquisitions have been in Minnesota. So we go another 2.5 hours northwest of there. You get to the Twin Cities, and we own a variety of franchises in the Twin Cities area. And then recently just had the opportunity to purchase Rochester, Minnesota. So long story short, through a bunch of different acquisitions and a couple of purchases from corporate, we now have 17 budget blinds territories. And we currently have 74 employees, I believe, across all of those territories. And we'll do a little over $20 million in revenue on the budget blinds side this year.
That's awesome. All right. It made me think of another question because I hear it from franchisees all the time. And I used to say it all the time. So I want to get your opinion on it because you're in diverse markets. Did you ever think, like, I'm guessing your original market, you're sitting there, you're doing your thing, and then you look at a larger market like the Twin Cities and like, oh, they've got it easy. They've got a large market. They've got this, that, or the other. Or, boy, I wish I had a smaller market because somebody else has a smaller market. So it sounds like you have a variety of different types of markets. How is did you ever have any of those thoughts? And then is it true that they're all so different, or they just or are they just a little bit different and each have their advantages with no big disadvantages? Like, what do you think about that topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is a variety of different things that we deal with. We deal with everything from relatively small towns in eastern Iowa and then a lot of farmland, all the way to dense inner city areas in the Twin Cities. Every territory has its own challenges, its own unique challenges, whether that be competition, drive time between appointments, even just weather, quite frankly. The Twin Cities area tends to get more snow than some of our other territories, so they have to deal with that in the winter. So it really is not a one size fits all from a territory standpoint. Somebody has to draw those boundaries somewhere, sitting at an office desk, and until you really drive the area, you don't really fully understand it. Some of our markets have a lot of brand new housing, and those actually tend to be a little better for us from a budget blind standpoint. And some of our territories are actually really high end, have a lot of big houses that go through big remodels, but they have no new houses. So every market's different. Every territory is different. They're all different sizes, even though they're all in the Midwest in 3 states that touch each other. The variety is very extreme.
So the different in different markets, small markets, different types of demographics and whatnot. Obviously you're in all those markets. Do you wish, you don't have to tell me which markets, do you wish that you weren't in all of those and were just in one particular market? Or do you kind of like being diversified in different markets?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if I could clone my best territory over and over, yeah, you'd want to do that, but it's not very realistic either. I think, the advantage we have as well is that we're in a lot of Big Ten university towns. We have the University of Iowa, the University of Wisconsin, the University of Minnesota, and as well as some big healthcare areas as well with Rochester, Minnesota, and Mayo Clinic. So, some of those areas are less, they're more stable because of some of those other types of institutions. That tends to make them better territories in general. But there's been some territories that just, quite frankly, don't have as much competition, and we can make better margins there. We don't have to spend as much money to advertise, and they are equally good at times. The Midwest, the probably challenging thing is always seasonality a little bit. People in the Midwest tend to just not want to spend as much money while we're all getting snowed on and it's negative 40 degrees. But, other than that, every market's a little different. There's probably some we would not buy again if we had to. but we have them now, and I don't foresee that changing anytime soon.
That's I like that. I have a similar philosophy with that because of my experience. Well, just in general, but I'm thinking specifically of solo salons in Orange County, California. We had one location in Irvine that was just an amazing one. Like it was always making money. I feel it was making money from day number one, and it was just in the perfect location, perfect demographics. Everything was perfect. Like we couldn't have screwed that up. Like we could have been the worst franchisee in the whole system, and that thing would have made us look like the best franchisee in the whole system. And then there was another one that was our largest underperforming location. I'm like, gosh, I had no idea it was going to be like that. But looking back, we see why it was underperforming, and we did some things wrong. We could have made it. We could have done some things better early on to have ramped it up in a different way, but it was underperforming. And then there's one other just tidbit. We had another location that was a slower start, and we were told this area, because of the demographics and the location, it's going to be a slower start, but you're going to retain your stylists like way longer than everywhere else. So longer, slower start, but much longer retention. And that proved to be true as well. So every territory is going to be a bit different, but at the same time, the fundamentals of the business and the playbook, you just got to execute. I mean, is that fair enough?
Yeah, and sometimes it even comes down to the sales rep for us. I mean, if I could clone my best sales rep and put them in all 17 territories, that would make a difference also. So not all sales reps are created equal, even if it's a better territory with not quite as good sales rep, maybe, that alone can make a big difference. So, I like to say we have a lot of A players, and we don't have a lot of drop off amongst sales reps, but there's obviously still differences amongst all those different people.
So talking to the franchisees right now, I'm so glad you brought that up. You put an A player salesperson into a C market, that thing's going to do well. Is that fair, Kevin? And
Yeah,
and
very
then
much so. Yeah, it's
no, he was like nodding his head yes, but then he said yes, so it's a double yes. That's fair. Translate that to franchisees. Put a top performing franchisee in an generally underperforming market. They're going to do just fine there. Put an underperforming franchisee in a top market. What happens, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, underperforming franchisees can underperform wherever they're at, and likewise, good franchisees can be successful wherever they're at. A lot of that is about the business owner. It's about the processes. It's about taking care of your customer, and doing things the right way. And if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing. Wherever you're at. So.
If let's say you are going into budget blinds right now and you just bought 4 territories and you wanted to be a top performer, what would you do in that franchise system to be a top performer? Like mentally going into it, you're like, we need to go in and do some of these things to be a top performer. Does anything come to mind? Because I got some things if you don't.
Sure. I mean, I think the big key for us has always been focusing on customer service and the customer experience. We look at it like a big snowball. You might start with a small snowball when you go to build the snowman, but you got to roll that on. And customers are kind of that same way. You might start with a small customer base, but if you take good care of them, you're going to create that repeat and referral base, and it starts to snowball on itself. So we often say that the longer established franchisees, have a big benefit over the new franchisees because they have this built-in customer base and this repeat and referral base. And it's very true. But all of us started with that small snowball. But we focused on building it by focusing on customer service, doing a good job, taking care of that customer, using the golden rule, treating them how they want to be treated, and really just taking it one day at a time. Like you want to go from brand new to giant, but it takes years, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of growth, it takes a lot of learning from mistakes. And another thing you can do is learn from those bigger franchisees. Most of the big franchisees are more than happy to answer questions. Budget Blinds has our biggest place for questions and communication amongst franchisees is actually still just a Facebook group to this day. And there's a lot of franchisees willing in there to help and give answers and guide you. And sometimes it's just picking up the phone call and or emailing our top franchisee and say, hey, I heard you're doing this. Like, how are you doing it? I even do that now myself as a large franchisee. If there's another franchisee that I think may be doing something better than we're doing, I'm going to pick up the phone or send them an email and say, hey, I heard you're doing this. How are you doing this? How's it working for you? What's the key? And then I try and take what I can from them and apply it to my markets. So, trying to learn from the people that are already in it, who have already made the mistakes, can give you a big head start. And hopefully you don't fall into those same traps that they may have already learned from. So.
Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are two really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisor and you're frustrated that you're not awarding as many franchises as you thought you would, this is the reason I created the Franchisor Mastermind. If you want access to the information, the techniques that the best franchise sales organizations are using to award franchises, and you want what mature brands have with their playbook of having happy, successful franchisees that grow the right way, then you might want to check out the Franchisor Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections. They want the playbook to achieve both short-term and long-term success. They want to increase enterprise value in their brand. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com.
So on the flip side of that are underperforming, unhappy franchisees. And I'm guessing if Budget Blinds is a normal franchise system, they probably have some underperforming, unhappy, upset franchisees, unless they're just an anomaly, which they might be. So, but if they're not, like, how would you go about communicating with them as a new franchisee going into it? Like, how much time would you spend listening to them?
I mean, I think like anything else, if you're going to focus on the negative, you're only going to see the negative. So, if you want to go into the system and hear about all the bad things, you can go find those things right away. I mean, they exist in any franchise system. It's more about focusing on what you can control as opposed to what you can't. There's going to be things out of your power. As a franchisee, you don't have full control. And there is some downsides to that at times, whether that's just you don't like the vehicle wrap or, they messed up the website, or you don't like the way the website's functioning, or they put a button in a different spot on the website. Like there's things like that people complain about as a franchisee that I'm like, well, there's only so much I can worry about. I can't change what corporate's doing with the website, but I can change how my people answer the phone today. I can change how my installers show up and, dust the ledge while they're up cleaning the window or installing the window treatment and those types of things. So a lot of it's about focusing on what you can control and how you can improve your own operation, regardless of what's going on around you.
So that brings me to like you starting another or buying another business that is a mom and pop business, probably because you wanted to have more control over something and you wanted it to be yours and you wanted the flexibility and the ability to expand without paying another franchise fee and all of that. And I think that is something that a lot of franchisees think about. And so I want to help some other franchisees kind of see how you did it. Again, it just didn't happen. I mean, you've been doing it for a little while, not for a long time, but for long enough for me to say, hey, Kevin, will you come on the podcast and talk about it? And so I'd like to, just understand and learn, what was it that caused you to want to buy or start another business that's outside of franchising? And like, what did that process look like?
Sure. So a lot of it actually started from some, issues basically with a franchisor, some changes that we didn't love that they were making. And so, we thought, maybe we should diversify here instead of putting all of our eggs in one basket. And so that's kind of where the, thought process started of like, maybe we should be a little more diverse here instead of just trying to buy 50 budget blinds territories. Maybe we should have some diversity in case we don't like the direction things ultimately go in. And so it was more about diversification than anything. So we started looking around just on biz buy sell, quite frankly, and just trying to get an idea of other home service or home franchise industries options available. And that's really how we started down the path of buying the flooring company. It was a biz buy sell listing or through a broker. I can't remember exactly which, but nonetheless, we heard about it through a broker, a franchise broker, or not even a franchise broker, just a business broker. And, the more we started thinking about it, we were just interested in the idea of, we can rebrand it if we want to. We can, control the website however we want. We can, market in whatever way we want. We don't have to worry about boundaries. One of the big things from a budget line standpoint is our zip code allocations. We do a pretty good job of just passing leads to our neighbors, but we really can't go in their areas. And so, sometimes I may be doing a better job marketing than my neighbor, and I'm getting a bunch of leads and having to pass them to them. And it would just be nice to not even have to do that if, we're doing a good job generating our own leads. So, it was one of those that it was a long time coming, probably from a standpoint of we felt like we had mastered the budget line system. We've grown within it. But it was time to just try something new as well. See if we could do it in a similar business, that serves kind of similar demographics, similar markets. It's still home service related. The big difference on the flooring side is the company we ended up buying actually works a lot with institutional customers. So we work a lot with the university and some other governmental buildings and apartment buildings. And we're actually not even working with that much in that industry on the budget line side. So we saw a lot of ability to grow both of them by learning from the other business. So we're working on trying to get more institutional customers on the window covering side, and vice versa. There's a big opportunity to grow residentially with this flooring company because they were not focused heavily on residential customers. And so it was kind of a natural fit to try and grow both of them by learning from the other one. And then, it's also was just a variety of different things. We had a similar mindset of focus on customer service. And quite frankly, it became a little easier because as part of the acquisition, the owner wanted to take his chips off the table, but he wasn't ready to be done working. So we had the benefit of keeping him around, and he's actually still around at this point. So we bought the flooring company in June of 2024, and he's set to work for us for 3 years unless we let him out early.
So what has gone according to plan? What have been some surprises, good or bad? And how long ago was that? Remind me, did you take over as owner of that flooring business?
So we're about 10 and a half months in now. So not even the full year mark yet. So we haven't seen a full year cycle yet, but some of the things we've learned, in either instance is, this is a business that had a lot of outdated processes and those types of things. We've tried to slowly evolve with them. We didn't come in day one and say, hey, you got to immediately change your computer system. We're going to immediately update the websites. We're going to rebrand the company, which is what we're actually going through right now. And then, some of those bigger things, but it was more understand the business, understand the people, try and figure out if the people on the bus are in the right seats. We had some shifting around of duties. Some people wanted to get into a different seat on the bus. One moved from residential to commercial, for example. And so, it was a lot of just trying to get our feet under us before we start to make changes in that business and not rush into them. Because they already had a good business. They were already doing over $3 million in revenue. And quite frankly, it's growing without us making much change. We'll probably end up doing over 4 million in the 12 months we've owned it. And a lot of that is not from changes we made. It's from letting it run as it was and just trying to find ways to tweak it.
What do you like about the franchise business now that you are a small business owner? And what do you like about the franchising business that you didn't appreciate before, if anything? Like this is honesty, man. So like, tell me the truth.
Right. Some of the very good things about franchises is that the processes are already in place for you. The computer systems are kind of already built for you. The website's not under your control, which is both a good and bad thing, but I don't have to worry about a Budget Blinds website because I can't do a whole lot to mine anyway. And so, it's a lot of those little things that take up time in your day that you don't realize that you don't have to deal with them. They just get done for you. And that's really the biggest benefit is all those little things, negotiating with vendors, quite frankly, and trying to deal with that. Corporate deals with all of our Budget Blinds vendors on where we purchase products. So that's very different on the flooring side as well, to have complete independence there. So those types of things are really helpful to have from the franchisee, that they just save you a lot of time that you don't even realize. So you can focus more on the day-to-day and less on some of these, other miscellaneous things that affect the business quite a bit and are important, but you just don't even realize they're getting done for you.
What are the things that you learned as a franchisee that are helping you as a small business owner? Because that's what franchisees think about. I knew that. It's like, man, I'm learning all these things as a franchisee. I've done it multiple times, multiple units, multiple brands, or really good with one brand, whatever. I can do it better. I'm learning so much. And there's a lot of truth to that. They have learned a lot, and it's going to be much easier for that person to go into a small business and be more SOP driven, playbook driven, system driven as they go into that small business that might not have been that, or a lot of owners in those industries as small business owners aren't there. They want to be more like a franchise. They want those SOP, the playbooks, the manual, the system, and they don't have that. So as a franchisee now on your own in a business, like what are some of those things that franchising helped you with? You look back and you're grateful for the experience that you've had.
Yeah, I think, a lot of it is on understanding just the ins and outs of business, understanding the seasonality of business. And some of the stuff that I've learned through Budget Blinds that we've applied right away are, just how I know how to do my own pay-per-click ads, for example. And so I can immediately come into that brand new business that had hardly done any advertising before. And I already know how to immediately turn on the Google machine and focus on Google My Business page. And, I know which local marketing company, quite frankly, to reach out to if I want mailers or those types of things. So that's on like the marketing business development side. On the process sides of things, this business was more old school, quite frankly. And I had already taken a Budget Blinds franchise location from a papered system to a paperless system. So I kind of know the steps of, how I get the flooring company to go from a paper business that has folders sitting on people's desks to a paperless business, and kind of that steps and processes we need to put in place. And I also know how much better it is after you're paperless. So I can also talk to the employees and kind of put ideas in their heads of here's what the future can look like as long as you guys are willing to adjust and learn and change. So, some of it's about planting seeds with those employees and saying, here's what we could do in the future. If you guys are on board with me, let's start walking this way. And I know it works because I've already done it before in another business. So it's easy to say, yeah, this change is going to help us all. Here's where it's going to help us. Here's the big things that improved in our other business. If we do it here, it's going to do the same thing for you. So the experience is super invaluable, to have the ability to just apply things that you already know. A lot of the stuff you don't even think about again, of stuff you've learned. You're just like, yeah, I naturally do that in my other business. And you're like, oh yeah, this one's not doing that. Like, I need to start doing that immediately in this business, because why aren't they doing this? And so there's a lot of those types of things that you just take for granted that you don't even realize you're doing in your franchise business until you go to another business that's not doing it.
So I love that. So if in a franchise, you were talking about it earlier, there's top performers, and you have a group chat, and you have top performers that you can reach out to, and people do that for you to get inside your head and to learn from you. As a mom and pop business, you don't have that like you do as a franchisee. That said, there's still probably ways to learn from top performers, especially in today's age. I've had Tommy Mello on, service expert, and has A1 Garage, and he's been on the podcast before, and he's just a great guy, and he's built an amazing company, and he has a community that helps other service-based owners out in general. He's got a great Facebook group, a good book, good conference, stuff like that. But for you, and in the flooring business now, who do you go to since you don't have franchisees or a franchisor to go to and learn from and ask those types of questions and shortcut the process?
Yeah, I spoke to it a little bit earlier. We're a little spoiled in the fact that we kept around the previous owner. So I have all of his experience and knowledge readily available to me. And it's nice that he was willing to work for us for quite a while as we transitioned. At the same time, it's tricky with him being there, because sometimes it's like, well, here's what you used to do, but we're not going to do that anymore. We're totally going to change this process. So luckily, he understands that, and he's flexible about it. But I have a lot of industry knowledge, luckily, through him available to me. I have one of the other employees has also been in the flooring industry for 15 plus years. So between the two of them and an experienced salesperson, I had 3 experienced employees to ask a lot of those questions too. But I also did a similar thing that I do on the budget line side. I went and found a Facebook group out there that has a lot of flooring dealers in it. And I just started asking questions, watching what they're talking about. We're considering adjusting our CRM software over the next 12 to 18 months. And quite frankly, I didn't even know about the software until I just went in that group and I said, hey, what software do you guys all recommend now? Because the software we're using now is currently pretty out of date and not very modernized. And, I immediately got just owner after owner telling me, basically the top 3 software programs that exist for the flooring side of the business. So that group's been helpful to me. Through that group as well, I found a more local flooring owner. He's in Wisconsin. He's not immediately adjacent to me, so I don't have immediate competition with him or anything like that. But I started asking him some questions too, of just like, hey, is this common in the flooring industry that sales reps are paid this way, or that, installers are paid this way, or that everybody uses sub labor? Why does everybody use subcontractors instead of having their own labor? So those types of questions I've reached out to, some of the people that I've met in that group. So a lot of it's about relationship building with anything else. I maybe don't necessarily know the top flooring people right now, but I could easily find them. It's about using your resources to go find those people and then introducing yourself and just build those connections, try and provide value to them as well. And that's always a key too of, hey, here's how I do this on the budget line side. Like, have you thought about doing this in your flooring business? And so trying to even teach them things that maybe come from not the flooring industry, something maybe they haven't seen before as more of an outsider. And some of it is I'm not trying to learn the ins and outs of the flooring business to the extent that I did on the budget line side. I'm trying to let that business run more independently so that it doesn't rely on me or any of the other budget lines owners to be in the day-to-day. So.
So there's a lot of good stuff that you just shared there. One of the things that I took away, and I heard you say it, or I kind of caught it, is the way that you ask questions and who you ask questions to. So you talked a lot, you gave a lot of good value there, but I really love your curiosity, the way that you ask questions. You don't go and ask a weak mom and pop competitor like, why aren't you doing it this way? This is the way to do it. You go in there curious to understand the way that they do things from payroll or paying employees or whatever it is. So curiosity standpoint, so you can take that against your experience and make some good decisions. And so you're asking the right people the right questions. And that's what good franchisees do. That's what good business owners do. The bad ones, they don't do that. One, they think they know it all because of whatever their experience is as a successful business owner in the past to get into franchising. They think they know it all. And I say that because that was me. Like I admit I was that guy that went from my first brand to my second brand, and I knew everything about franchising and the next business. And I realized like, holy cow, I don't know as much as I think. I definitely need to be more curious, ask better questions, ask them to the right people versus trying to try to let everybody know how smart I was because I had a level of success as a franchisee for 10 years before that. And like, it's ridiculous that I'm embarrassed that I used to think that, but I'm completely different now. Like I'm super curious. And so I love that about you. And that for franchisees, like that's the posture, that's the attitude, that's what you want to have as you go into a new business, whether you're going into a new franchise for the first time, for the second time, or you get into a new business like Kevin did. That's how you want to approach it. So, all right, man, you've this has been perfect. You're doing pretty amazing for your first podcast. Anything else that you think is relevant or you'd want to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on it earlier, but our key to success has always been focusing on the customer experience and customer service. And naturally, business is going to grow itself if you do that. They're going to tell their friends and family. They're going to be willing to stick up for you on social media if somebody posts some goofy comment on your Facebook post or whatever it is. Build that group of raving fans, and really you got to do that by doing what you say you're going to do. Again, practicing the golden rule of treat customers how you'd like to be treated. Try and put yourself in their shoes, and ultimately, as long as you're doing that in business day to day, you're going to grow over time. It's inevitable. So, if you want to grow, it may not be the fastest shortcut or the biggest trick in the book, but if you want to be long-term successful, it's focus on the customer experience and customer service in general.
And if you want to learn from people like Kevin and others, join the Facebook group because that's where you get a lot. Join Facebook groups of whatever industry that you're in. And the Franchise Secrets group for franchising is the best one out there. I think it's the only one out there. But it's franchisesecretsgroup.com. Check it out. Kevin's in there. I'm in there. People are always willing to help. Kevin, I just had an idea. We should do a webinar. Now that you've done a successful podcast, we should do a webinar on how to go from a franchisee to a business owner outside of franchising. Hey, I'm putting you on the spot, but are you up for that one of these days?
Hey, I'll give it a shot. I just like I was willing to give podcasting a shot. I might as well give some other things a go. But I think quite frankly, I still feel relatively new in it, with it being less than a year. But I think if there's people out there that want to know answers or have questions about this type of thing, just like anything else, I'm willing to answer, share my experience. I may not be an expert at it. Like I said, we're still relatively new to it, but it's a learning process. I think everybody thinks frequently in social media, everybody thinks the other people have the perfect life. But they don't realize the day-to-day struggles. So, everybody's trying to learn, do their best, and I'm more than happy to help. So,
I love it. Just strong-armed him on the podcast. So it's gonna happen. Thanks again, man. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Erik. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.